Ben Sasse, I took some heat from our first episode for saying that I didn't think that I don't know whether I said you didn't have a good sense of humor or whether you weren't yourself a funny person. And people said that I was being mean to you.
By people, we mean my mom. I gave her your number.
But now we have proof of concept because we were going to bring, for our first episode, Conan O'Brien, a comedian. But because the United States Olympic team won the gold medal in hockey, USA, a sports freak, a jock, are jazzed about this, and you want to give them Al Michaels first because Al Michaels is the guy who called the Miracle on Ice, the 1980, which we talk all about in the episode.
Al Michaels is the eternal present. The guy's an octogenarian, and he's at the center of everything. We'd be nuts not to ride that mule.
This is, but your wish is my command. And we should also point out to listeners that this was recorded before that stirring victory, or otherwise the interview would have been peppered with the USA chants that you previously heard from Professor Sasse.
1980 was on my 8th birthday. The next Olympics was 46 years to the day on my birthday. Last time it worked better because it wasn't on a Sunday. This one was tough because we had to watch before church. And then during the sudden death moment, we were driving to church and tried to pretend we weren't checking our phones.
This is a parable. This is a freighted in the book that this will be a vivid scene. I feel this will be a very vivid scene in the book.
I'm getting another Al Michaels tattoo. That's all I have to say.
All right. Well, maybe he's going to teach us something. So let's take a listen.
Well, Al, we have already introduced you, so I won't beclown myself by going longer. I'm sure everybody who ever interviews you, especially when it's also the first time meeting, says the GOAT and the soundtrack of sports from my childhood. So I won't repeat any of that. But let's just make sure our friends and listeners understand. You're the only guy ever to have called all Big Four sporting event championships. Am I correct?
That's true, yeah. Because I was at ABC at a time when we had the World Series, and we had the Super Bowl, and we had the NBA Finals, and also the Stanley Cup Finals. So I did play-by-play for the series, 8 of them, 11 Super Bowls, 9 Olympics, 2 NBA Finals, and truth be told, I did not do the play-by-play in the Stanley Cup Finals. I was the host. So, but I've been involved with all 4, and it's been a matter of mainly luck. I had to be at a certain place at a certain time when they had the rights for me to be a part of it.
We're going to want to run through some of the storytelling, best calls as you experience them and what those moments in sport meant for American shared civic life. But first, will you give us the 2, 3, 4 minute bio run through? I know you were born in Brooklyn, but made the Dodgers-like move to LA, I assume in junior high or high school. But why don't you just do like a biological geographic run through of your whole life real quick?
Well, Brooklyn is my DNA. Even though most of my life has been spent in Southern California. In fact, today is the 40th anniversary of Linda and me and our kids moving into this very same house that you're looking at right now. But I was born in Brooklyn. My father loved sports. And when I was about 6 or 7 years old, and the Dodgers were still there, my father walked me over to Ebbets Field. It was a 10-minute walk. There's nothing like having a Major League Baseball team in your neighborhood. So when I walked into Ebbets Field, it's the first thing I remember, and I was just blown away by the whole atmosphere, how green the grass was. The Dodger uniforms were whiter than white. Vin Scully for many years described it as wedding cake white, which was perfect. And the signage on the outfield walls. And these eyes are old enough to have seen Jackie Robinson play in person and Duke Snider and all of those great Dodgers. And so I grew up loving sports. My father took me to Madison Square Garden, Rangers, Knicks, the football giants. I watched Frank Gifford play when I was a kid. And then, of course, he was my partner for 12 years on Monday Night Football. We moved to L.A. I was distraught at first, and then the Dodgers decided they were going to move to Los Angeles. So we moved with them, came out to L.A., went to the World Series in 1959 at the Coliseum when the Dodgers beat the White Sox, went to Super Bowl, won in the Coliseum in January of 67. So I've always loved sports. And when I was going to go to college, I wanted to go to a school that offered the opportunity for students to broadcast games. There were very, very few of them. Now there are a ton of them. But in those years, and I wanted to stay out west because I liked the better weather, so I could have gone to either USC or Arizona State, were the two schools that had programs. And I wanted to go away to school, so I chose Arizona State, an hour's flight away from LA. And in the 4 years there, I wound up doing football, basketball, and baseball on the campus station. And our baseball team, they were the national champions in 65.
Reggie was there.
I went to school. So when I was a freshman, Sal Bando was my classmate. Rick Monday followed the next year, and then Reggie came the following year. So I've known all of those guys through the course of history here. And then when I got out of school, having done all of those games, and Charlie Taylor and Curly Culp were both in the Hall of Fame, played football for us. We had Jumpin' Joe Caldwell in basketball. And then, so I looked around, tried to get a job, and, I wanted to build my career around baseball. And I knew I had to start in the minors. I wrote to every minor league team. And then my father-in-law had a business in Hawaii and knew somebody over there. And he said, hey, just fly over there. I'll set you up. You can meet this guy, and this guy knows another guy. And I wound up meeting a man named Jack Quinn, who was the general manager of the Hawaii Islanders, a AAA team in those years. And sure enough, walked into his office, left the tape. He said, hey, my announcer may get called up by his reserve unit, which he did. I get the call right at the beginning of the season. How soon can you come over here and do a few games? I said, tomorrow. And that started a three-year run in Hawaii, doing the Hawaii Islanders baseball team, University of Hawaii football and basketball, and high school football and basketball, which is gigantic over there. So my name, and we were a very, very, very successful minor league franchise, drew 500,000 people. My name was brought to the attention of the Cincinnati Reds, Bob Hausum and Dick Wagner. They brought me in for an interview in November of 70 and gave me the job in 71. I did the Big Red Machine. I had Pete Rose in his prime. I had Johnny Bench ascending I had Perez in his prime. Morgan came the next year in a trade, Sparky Anderson. It was phenomenal. 3 years in Cincinnati, got to do the World Series on NBC when I'm 27 years old. And then I could have stayed there forever, but here came the San Francisco Giants, a moribund franchise, but they were going to triple my salary. So off we went.
Linda said, we're moving.
We're moving. Well, we're going to San Francisco, and we lived in Menlo Park, hard by Stanford, for 3 years. And that led to ABC hiring me to do what they called the B game on Monday Night Baseball in 1976. That led me to ABC in 76 for what was a 30-year run. And by the way, just, there's so many crazy stories. I feel like Zelig at some points in my life. I mean, I'm always kind of there. So one of the people I started with in ABC, because he was a programmer in sports, his name was Bob Iger. So Bob and I go back 50 years, 50. We go all the way back. We've been through everything together. It's worked out fairly well for him, I guess, for both of us too. And then when they did Monday Night Football for 20 years, and then Monday Night Football went to ESPN, and I was working with John Madden and my producer and my director, and they were all recruited by Dick Ebersol, who was starting Sunday Night Football in 2006. And I wanted to go with them. I couldn't make the deal with Dick initially, and eventually I did, and that sent me back over to NBC in 2006, and that was a 16-year run, and then over to Amazon, and this will be next season will be number 5. So here we go: Hawaii to Cincinnati to San Francisco to ABC to NBC to Amazon. There you have it.
In the pressy of a career that can be that comprehensive, but still not even touch on the 1980 Winter Olympics. This is a career, brother. That's a career. So, I'm a person who broadcasts now, but came in through print journalism. And something I've always told myself is when I see these people with these fat contracts and these big deals, and I think, man, if I ever did that, I'd get paid and I'd get gone, right? And I'd be long gone. I'd get that paycheck and I'd be gone. But you seem to be, and you're 81, is that right?
Correct.
You don't read as 81, number one. And number two, you don't read as unhappy or miserable or that this is a grind for you. And I'm sure it is, practically speaking, a grind. Talk to me about how you talk about the longevity and talk about the joyfulness in it.
Well, let's go back to me walking into Ebbets Field. And that made me a gigantic sports fan. I guess in a way, probably when I was 9 or 10, I thought, what could be a better job than getting into all of these games for free? And I found a way to do that by getting into this part of the business. And I always was fascinated by broadcasting. So when I think back to that, and I think back to also when I got to do the 1972 World Series as the voice of the Reds, and in those years, NBC would bring in the voices of the teams that are in the World Series. So I did with Kurt Gowdy and Tony Kubek the World Series on NBC television. And Kurt was one of my idols.
1 and 2. The wind. And a pitch to bench. Change hit in the air to deep right field. Back goes Clemente. It's a fence. He's done.
He and Vince Scully. And I'll never forget, Kurt said to me, hey, kid, you're going to have a great career. Just don't get jaded. And those words resonate in my ears to this day. Don't get jaded. And I'm thinking to myself, I have one of the greatest jobs man ever created. I get to go to all of the great places in the world, wide world of sports, of course. It took me across borders 40 or 50 times, seen the country hundreds of times, get to go to sports events, get to be on television, get to be paid fairly handsomely. What's to complain about? What? And I'll never,
people do.
Those words don't get jaded. We're still ringing. So really complaining about what? A bad hotel experience? Come on.
Wow. I think there are 13 threads that are going to be an hour each here. So thank you for giving us your day, night, and tomorrow morning.
Right.
I want to understand a little bit about the craft, and then I want us to talk about some specific games and moments. But first, pretend somebody is a thoughtful American but not a sports fan. Explain the dynamic between the play-by-play guy and the color analyst, or whatever our current term is for it, and how it's evolved over your 55 years. And then let's have Chris also ask you some questions about your partners, because you know everybody in the industry because you worked with them, some of them for a really long time.
Sure.
So what is a play-by-play guy, and what is it like in a 2 or 3 man studio, and how do you guys do no-look passes?
Well, I think what you try to do, and this is, it's not as simple as it sounds, but make it conversational. You can't make it completely conversational because people want to be, they want to hear excitement in the play-by-play man's voice. The analyst is there mainly to describe what he has seen over, for the most part, replays. To me, I guess I get criticized now because in the minds of some, I'm not loud enough or excited enough. I don't want to scream at you. I don't want to holler at you. They have people in this business right now who are looking for hits on YouTube. So let me scream my guts out.
Yeah.
And I'm not talking about it at the level that I'm at right now. I'm talking about, other people in the business doing like college games or whatever. Let me get some hits by screaming my guts out at you. I can't do that. To me, that overwhelms the drama. I want to build the drama. And I am one who feels that I can really do some play-by-play in ellipses and captions. I don't have to do them in complete run-on sentences and paragraphs. So anyway, I've been lucky, especially in the latter stages of my career, to have worked with John Madden, Chris Collinsworth. I've got Kirk Herbstreit right now, all with a tremendous amount of experience. It's folded in perfectly for me with those guys over the last quarter century. So I mean, we try to, as I say, we try to make it conversational, but in a way, I look at it as the game is the melody, and we provide the lyrics, and we're trying to match the melody. Otherwise, it sounds cacophonous.
The thing I'm most amazed at in sports today, particularly in football, is it's the last place in a lot of ways that Americans get together, right? So when we look back at 2025, what were the most watched things in the United States? 8 of 10 or 9 of 10 will end up being NFL games, right? That's the reason Amazon wanted you. That's the reason all the streamers are getting into the game, because the sports generally, but the NFL in particular, have become one of the last meeting places for Americans, where no matter what color hat the other person is wearing, if you run into another adult in the United States, there's a decent chance that if you say, "Hey, did you see that Bears-Rams game?" it might be true, and you might have something to talk about. Do you feel the responsibility around that when you call a game or you're talking about the game to keep it clean, to not let politics come into it?
Yeah, I mean, you're right. It's a communal experience, Chris. It's one of the last few you mentioned, 8 out of 10. I think it's like 77 out of 100. I mean, they talk about a drama or a comedy being, the whole world is watching. No, it's not. The whole world is watching the National Football League, or at least our part of the world. I try to, I always have tried to play it down the middle as close as I can, where you don't want to show a rooting interest, and I really don't have a rooting interest. My rooting interest is very simply drama. What's better than a great overtime game or a double overtime game? That's what I root for. The worst thing in the world, in this business is a blowout, especially when the road team is blowing out the home team and the crowd is dead. So, I've done thousands of games now in all of the sports. That happens to you. But every once in a while, and this year in particular, we got some classic games that went down to the end. And that's what the NFL has become right now. It's a communal experience, and it lets people, I love when, and it's fun, but you're talking about, how this guy would fare in this era and everything. And, how would Joe Montana be in this era? He'd be great. I mean, you can't, take a guy and place him 30 years forward or 40 years backward and compare it. I think right now, to me, every sport is played at the highest level. It's unbelievable. Football for sure. Basketball, definitely. Baseball to a degree. The baseball has become a little bit of too much of a home run strikeout game. Hockey, and I'm a huge hockey fan, huge. Hockey is played at a level I have never seen, and it's not remotely close to what I saw 50 years ago. Not even close. The players are so big, so fast, so skilled, so talented that one of my old partners, Ken Dryden, who I did the Olympics with in 80, 84, and 88.
Oh, man.
The late Ken Dryden, he was a wonderful man. Ken died in this summer, I think in August. Ken said he went to a game for the first time in a number of years at the Boston Garden, sat in the third row. Last year, he said, I don't even recognize the game I'm watching. And this was a guy who won multiple Stanley Cups and multiple Vezina trophies. Anyway, I want to celebrate sports, not diminish or criticize them. I can be critical. Obviously, every announcer has to be to a certain degree, but I'm really here to celebrate sport and what I'm doing.
When you say your rooting interest is drama, I've got to assume you're still a Dodgers fan. I mean, the boyhood stuff doesn't go away fast.
And you're wrong.
Really?
You're wrong.
Okay.
You know what? Remember, I did the Dodgers' two biggest rivals in the 6 years in the early 70s.
All right.
I did the Reds. I did the Giants. I think my heart is still with Cincinnati because I had one of the great baseball teams of all time. Rose, Bench, Perez, Morgan, that whole group, Cesar Geronimo, David Concepcion, Sparky Anderson. In my heart of hearts, they're still my team.
I won't take the Rose thread right now. I imagine we'll get back to sports betting at some point. But to the criticism you get that you don't shout the game at you, let me just say, as the son of a lifelong football and wrestling coach, one of the reasons I'm such a fan of the way you exercise your craft, sorry, morphine brain delay, is I love this. I love all these sports, and my dad was an adrenaline junkie as well, so he raced cars, dirt track stuff on the side, and so we always went to the Indy 500. We didn't have any money, but we would sit inside a turn 2 with Hell's Angels, but back then it was tape delay, so we'd be at the race, Sunday morning at noon Eastern, and then we'd get to listen to you call it at night. I can't remember what years did you do Indy 500?
Well, I did. I hosted it in the late 90s, early 2000s. I think Paul Page was still doing the wheel by wheel. But it's very funny you mentioned that, because as a kid, I used to listen to the Indy 500 when I was growing up. My father would put the radio on, and Sid Collins was the announcer, and I grew to be fascinated and loved the Indy 500 to the point where in 1971, when I got the Reds job, the first thing I did is I looked at Memorial Day. Were the Reds home, because Indianapolis is 100 miles from Cincinnati? Were they home, and was it a night game? Which it was. So I, in 1971, with my wife, we got up at 6 in the morning, drove to Indy, and I got to see my first Indy 500. I went again in 1972. Then I hosted it in 99, 2000, and 2001. And most recently, Greg Penske, Roger's son, usually accomplished man in his own right, is my neighbor. So Greg took me back there 3 years ago. The Indy 5, I always tell people the start of that race is as great as anything in sports. Unmatchable. I mean, the hair, every hair is standing up on every part of your body. That when they come down that straightaway, and
they come out of turn 4, and you think there's no way they can hit that hole and get a green and not end up 25 of 33 cars in a pile up. Okay, so the praise for you is the way you call football is, as a person who loves football and isn't going to lie to us and say that a really terrible game is right at the edge of the greatest game ever. So I don't want the game shouted at us, because I know you and Kirk right now will give us the best we can get out of this game, but you're not going to lie to us and claim that this is the greatest thing ever. And I feel like the call-in shows at the edge create this phony drama where either the day of or the day after the game, people want to inject themselves into the story and create super drama that isn't really about the sport. Do I read it right? What's going on, and why your understated manner is serving the fan better?
Oh, yeah. Listen, I'm a fan at heart myself, so I can feel what the fan can feel. So we did a game in our first year at Amazon, and Kirk was coming from a different place. He had done a lot of college football with different announcers over on the ESPN side. So I mean, he loves football, maybe as more than anybody I've ever seen in my life. But we did a game. Our 4th or 5th game was Indianapolis at Denver. The game had no touchdowns. It went to overtime. You had one guy had like 5, the rookie left tackle for Indy had like 5 penalties. The game was horrible, and there were all kinds of delays. And I said early in the 4th quarter, I said, Kirk, is it possible that a game can be so bad it's actually good? and he said, no. I said, Kirk, he was learning me at that particular point. And then the game goes to overtime. It's tied 9-9. You can't wait for this game to and now we're going to OT. And we come back from commercial, and we punch up a shot of a lot of the crowd leaving, going to the parking lot. And Kirk goes, it's overtime. How can they leave? I go, they've seen enough. So anyway, he gets me now completely. And and to me, that's the type where the guy sitting at home going, this game sucks, but it's so bad I'm going to watch it. So, and truth be told, that's my mantra.
So watching you in since the days of gold jackets, when ships were made of wood and men were made of steel, the one thing that always came through about you was a spirit of fun, right? There is a spirit of fun. There is a puckishness, a waggishness about you. You do have those little jokes. You have the things. For the attentive viewer, there's a little Easter egg there that if you're paying attention and you know the game, that you have a little something extra for them. Not
Is that
everyone.
about the line? What are you saying? Is that about betting? What are you saying,
No.
Chris?
That's one thing, but I know exactly what Chris is saying here.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the spirit of fun and playful and enjoyment and honoring the fan. Not everybody you have worked with has had that same energy. I think, I mean, you could go all the way back to Chick Hearn, but you could certainly say Howard Cosell, these like prickly people who were difficult people who wanted to be difficult, right? I think about people, and I'm not asking you to say anything bad about anybody, but my point is there are people who don't want to have fun and aren't having fun. What do you do when you find yourself in a situation where you have to have chemistry with and work with somebody who doesn't share your approach to calling the game?
Well, I can't really come up with a partner that I had a major issue with. Some are better than others. Again, I go back over the last several years. You brought up Cosell, and I did a lot of baseball games with Howard, and I loved it at first. It was great, especially what was happening away from the stadiums. I mean, the dinners and carrying on and the whole thing. And he was such a character. He got very well, prickly is a good word at the end, and he was just tired of everything. And the last couple of years were no fun. So, but on balance, I mean, Cosell was very different, and I enjoyed most of it. But you go through my last 25 years with, and I had, Frank Gifford and Dan Deerdorf, 12 years with those guys. Madden was fantastic, 7 with John, 13 with Chris, going on 5 now with Kirk. I mean, they've never stuck me with anybody that has been an issue for me, fortunately. But, who knows what's down the line? Not much.
All right, we're gonna run through a number of your favorite calls and see if we can tease you out at any mea culpas or mistakes. But first, just let's linger at Lake Placid for a minute. So if I recall right, the game, it was February 22nd of '80, right?
Correct.
It was a Saturday.
That was a Friday, 5:00.
Friday. Okay. This is my 8th birthday. It is my 8th birthday, and we didn't have any sheet ice in rural Nebraska. I'd played a lot of pond hockey, but I didn't even really know the rules. And I remember this is my birthday, and we're all going to watch this tonight. And unlike the rule where we're fans of you being a fan of drama and not a fan of the team, obviously there's something going on different as an American in the middle of the Cold War. So, give us your sense as the game goes on of the chances that Herb Brooks' boys have a shot to really win this game, and what's going on in your chest? How do you maintain control as what had to be an American Patriot fan at the same time on the way to Miracle?
Yeah, that's the one time you can root on the air, because you don't want to root during a Super Bowl or a game where people are on both sides. But my feeling in regard to that game was that the audience is 99.94% going with me, and the 0.06 are a bunch of like KGB agents hanging out in Ogallala, Nebraska. Right? Okay.
We're known for that.
Yeah, right. Right. You never know where you'll find these guys underground. So I got the hockey assignment in 1980, and I really wanted the speed skating assignment because Eric Heiden was going to win 5 gold medals, and he did. I mean, he was supposed to win it, and he did. And it's funny you mentioned this. I was back in Lake Placid last week. They had kind of an anniversary Run Back the Miracle thing put on by Anheuser-Busch. So I was just there 7 days ago and had a phenomenal time. So Ken Dryden, Ken had just retired in the prime of his career, because Ken was a Renaissance man. I know that's an overused phrase, but he was. And he and I went over to Moscow in late 1979, before the Olympics, to scout and watch all of the Olympic teams apart from the U.S. team. They were in a tournament there called the Izvestia tournament. So I got to see the Soviets play 5 or 6 games over there and a couple of games on their tour when they came to the United States, and then through the first 5 games of the Olympics. They played a different game than any other country. Nobody was even close to them. So the thought of the U.S. beating them, forget about it. Forget about it. Unless they got 20 guys got food poisoning. So the U.S. team starts out with a last-minute goal against Sweden in their first game. Oh, pretty good. And then somehow we killed Czechoslovakia, at that time the second-best team in the country. Now our country begins to go, oh, what's happening here? And then we beat Norway, we beat Romania, we beat West Germany to set up a game against the Soviets, which is the miracle game. Ken Dryden and I, our hotel was maybe 3 or 4 blocks from the arena. I think we left the hotel around 1:30. Game is going to start at 5 o'clock. And I remember one thing in our conversation was I said to him, looking at it in a television sense, if it's only like 3-1 Soviets, middle to second period, that will keep an audience. I feared 7-0, 8-1, something like that. So as the game evolves, Soviets take a 1-0 lead.
Blue line, the Americans doing that well thus far against the Soviets. Buzz Snyder losing it out to the point. Slap shot, and it was deflected in from the point. The Soviet Union takes a 1-0 lead. Kasatonov's slap shot was deflected in past break.
We get a goal, tie it. They go up 2-1, and then Mark Johnson scores that goal as the clock goes to 0-0 at the end of the first period to tie the game. Whoa, look what we have.
The first taking it away for the U.S. Pavlich up ahead to Snyder. Slap shot goes in! Buzz Snyder!
The Soviets changed goalies, which was crazy. Take the best goalie in the world, Tretiak, out, put the other guy in. And then the second period is totally dominated by the Soviets. They outshot the U.S. 12-2, but Jim Craig was phenomenal, the goalie. He only let in 1 goal, so now it's still a game, 3-2, but we're really not going to win the game, are we? And then about 8 minutes into the third period, Mark Johnson scores at the end of a power play.
Long shot, the easy save by Tretiak, but Johnson is there and scores with 1 second to play in the period.
Whoa, what? Then at the 10-minute mark, Mike Eruzione shoots. He scores. He scores. Now it's like bedlam in the building. It's crazy. And we are on about 8,000 people in that arena. And our booth is like a wooden platform at the front of the second level, the balcony, which is kind of like I felt like it was going to collapse at one point because the building was shaking. And it was shaking. And the guys in the truck are screaming gibberish in my ears. And the last 10 minutes of that game, especially the last couple of minutes, I'm like a horse with blinkers on. Just call the game. Call the game. I have no time to think about anything to say. The Soviets are putting pressure on. How about if I had blurted something out like I did and the Soviets had scored with 3 seconds to play? How stupid would that have sounded? So I had to just concentrate on the play. The puck is in the American end. We're trying to get it out. We finally get it out with about 6 seconds to center ice. And now there's that moment in time where I know they can't mount an attack and we have won the game. So the word that popped into my head was miraculous. It comes out in a question and answer form. Do you believe in miracles? Yes. And let it play.
Sweep it away. 28 seconds. The crowd going insane. Karloman shooting it into the American end again. Morrow is back there. Now Johnson, 19 seconds. Johnson over to Ramsey. Leonov gets checked by Ramsey. McClanahan is there. The puck is still loose. 11 seconds. You've got 10 seconds. The countdown going on right now. Morrow up to Schultz. 5 seconds left in the game. Do you believe in miracles? Yes! Unbelievable.
So I got as lucky as anybody can possibly get, because I think about having the opportunity to screw that thing up as well. So, and I had no idea. I had no idea as to the impact of that either, because I had done the game. Whatever I said comes out of my heart, and And then in those years, what was crazy, the game ends at about 7:15. It's on tape delay because we couldn't get the Soviet Federation to move the game into prime time. So at 8 o'clock, you got the Sweden-Finland game. And because in those years, they're worried about a tape machine breakdown or some technical snafu, they made Dryden and me stay in the arena and do that game to a tape machine. So I couldn't even exult in the U.S.-Russia game until almost 11 o'clock I get back to the hotel. So that was how crazy that night was. So I had really no idea that it could possibly happen. It did. Because somebody once said to me, "What do you think the Soviet announcer said at the end of that game?" I said, "Well, maybe, do you believe in debacles?" So, so I got very lucky. And then, of course, don't forget, everybody, most people forget, the U.S. still had to win one more game on Sunday against Finland. Good team, very good team. But we should win the game. But who knows? It would have been if DraftKings was around at that point, maybe dead even. And Finland leads 2-1 at the end of the second period. So wait a minute, we got 20 more minutes. If we don't win that game, the Soviets win the gold medal, and we might not even win the bronze. So we have to win that game. It's 2-1, and Herb Brooks, who did one of the greatest coaching jobs in the history of sports, the last thing he said to his team before he left the locker room, and he said it twice for emphasis, if you lose this game, you will take it to your freaking grave. And I'm saying freaking.
He didn't say freaking, right?
No, he didn't say freaking. If you lose this game, you're taking it to your blanking grave. He said it twice, and then the guys, of course, raced out onto the ice, tie the game within like 3 minutes, take the lead halfway through the period, and get a shorthanded goal at the end. But I mean, it was so amazing on every level. We came from behind in 6 of those 7 games. We were an undermanned team, but we were the best conditioned team because he made those guys skate like crazy. They were on a 60-game European tour leading up to the Olympic Games. And it was so great because I had Jim Craig and Mark Johnson and Mike Rosioni were with me in Lake Placid last week. And it's an amazing thing to watch people come up to those guys and come up even to me and go, "Oh my God, that's so great." And even people who weren't alive and now live it through the movie Miracle and the HBO documentary. And then, by the way, next week, guys, there's a documentary coming out on Netflix. I've seen a couple of trailers. It's going to be great. They got some interviews with these guys you've never seen before and some footage you've never seen before. This is a story that'll go on forever.
This is your favorite game that you ever called?
It's number 1 through 8. People say to me, let's put it that way. Tell me, I can't dream of a scenario. I can't dream of one that would eclipse it. It meant too much to the country.
That's pretty fair.
I'm telling you. Remember, it galvanized the country at a time when we needed it. There were so many things going on, hostages being held in Iran, Soviets invading Afghanistan, us threatening to boycott their Olympics, which they did. They paid us back. Prime rate is 19.5%. Gas lines. Wow. We don't feel right. Even Jimmy Carter's coming on saying, there's like a malaise in the country. And it took a hockey team. To get us out of those doldrums. Amazing.
Let's jump through the other 3 big sports for a minute. Let's go basketball, baseball, and then to the king, football. They've got to be so different to call. I assume basketball and hockey have some affinity since there's no set plays on the timing. But talk about the difference between calling hockey and basketball, and what's your favorite basketball moment you've ever called?
Well, basketball is different than hockey in the sense that, especially on radio, because one team has possession and the other doesn't. Now in hockey, possession can go back and forth at center ice. And and guys checking guys and taking possession away. Hockey is going back, and you in your mind's eye, especially on radio, you can picture, okay, the Lakers have the ball, the Celtics have the ball. In hockey, wait, who's got the puck? And the puck is always not very often in total control of somebody, but bouncing around. There's a scramble for it and all that. Baseball and football are so totally different because one team's at bat, the other team's in the field. One team has the ball in football, the other team's on defense. Hockey's the hardest by far on radio, no question. So, I mean, those would be the distinct differences between the sports. You can picture the three sports because has possession. Hockey's a different animal.
Best basketball call you've ever had the honor of calling?
Did the NBA for a couple of years in the early 2000s. I would say Lakers against San Antonio, Western Conference semifinals, Game 5, tied 2 games apiece. So Kobe Bryant scores with about 10 seconds to give the Lakers a 1-point lead. San Antonio takes the ball. Shaq is the center. Shaq forces Tim Duncan all the way out to like 17 feet. Duncan has never taken a shot from 17 feet, falling to his left, puts it in.
To Duncan. He gets doubled. Shaq all over him. He gets away, a fadeaway. He makes it with 4/10 left. Unbelievable.
Right? So now they have taken the lead. Timeout. 0.4 of a second on the clock. I'm working with Doc Rivers in his 1 year between, leaving Orlando where he got fired and going to the Boston Celtics the next year. And Doc's talking about this is the absolute minimum amount of time you could possibly have and to get a shot away. So Gary Payton is inbounding the ball. Kobe gets like almost triple team. So the pass comes in to Derek Fisher, who throws up a prayer.
Here they go. They get it to Fisher. He scores! Derek Fisher scores at the buzzer. It'll have to be reviewed. They'll review it. The Lakers are going to run to the dressing room, and they'll try to get on the plane before the officials can get over to the scorer's table. Oh, my God.
Now, the clock is at 0-0-0. Lakers have won the game for the moment. It's going to be reviewed. I said on the air, I said, well, the Lakers, they're not waiting around for the review. They're already on the tarmac because when the Lakers just ran off the court, they don't want to hear about any review. And Michelle Tafoya, who just announced she's running, you saw that for the Senate in Minnesota. I love working with Michelle, a fantastic human being. So Michelle is our sideline reporter, and now she's got to run down the court and get somebody to interview. So the only guy who was in bad enough shape not to be on the tarmac was Shaq, right? So she's able to run Shaq down just before he's going to disappear into the tunnel. And she says, all right, Shaq, explain that. And Shaq says, one lucky shot deserved another, which was it's my favorite sideline moment ever. Great. So that's basketball.
How many games does your brain have stored where you can just start to call it again right now with no tape?
Probably too many, Ben.
That was
it's pouring out of every orifice.
That was a privilege. Baseball, favorite moment ever, and here let's get you to be self-critical. You ever screw up any baseball calls?
Oh, sure. I mean, I'm sure I have, but I mean, nothing to the extent where I want to kill myself over it. No. I did the Earthquake World Series in San Francisco.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
That's the oddest moment
that
coming on here. But the greatest would be the 5th game of the 1986 American League Championship Series, Red Sox Angels. Angels are up 3-1. Angels are going to win their first ever pennant. Gene Autry owns the team. The 3-run lead in the 9th inning. You got the horses with the mounted horse. What was it?
Trigger.
I'm trying to remember. The horses were just off the field, and you had the mounted police there. They're going to protect the field. Anyway, so with 1 out in the 9th inning, Don Baylor hits a 2-run homer. So now it's 5-4, and this is when the Angels had the Red Sox down their last strike, 2 out, 2 strikes on Dave Henderson, and he hits a home run off Donnie Moore.
To left field and deep and down he goes back and it's gone. Unbelievable.
Now they have the lead. Angels get a run in the bottom of the 9th inning. They can still win the game and win the pennant, 6-6. The number 9 guy in the Boston bullpen, because they'd been through all of the other relievers, he comes in. He gets the 3 and 4 hitters out, Doug DeCinces and Bobby Grich. Game goes to the 10th inning. Gary Pettis almost hits a home run in the 10th inning, but Jim Rice goes back against the wall, and reaches up and makes the catch and has to look into his glove to make sure he caught it. Otherwise, the Angels win there. And then Henderson comes up in the 11th, hits a sacrifice fly. Angels get the Red Sox out 1-2-3, win the game. We go back to Boston for 6 and 7, and the Red Sox win both of those to win the pennant, where they get bamboozled in the World Series, of course, on the Bill Buckner ball against the New York Mets. So the Red Sox had this miracle comeback in the playoffs and then the disaster in the World Series.
Chris, I don't know how we possibly let Al ever go. Ask your two questions, and I'll ask a football finale. But this is for, everybody kind of wants our mom to hold us again, especially if you're as sickly and ugly as I am. But what I really want is the voices of great moments in life to be story told again. And you're here doing this for us now. This is a privilege.
I think what we all want is for Al Michaels to just narrate the supercut of our lives, right? This is what I think everybody wants, is a supercut of your life, the best moments with Al Michaels narrating. The two questions, and they're kind of related. Question one is about the gambling in sports and how it's changing the way people perceive and consume and watch sports. The second question is about my 15-year-old son. And he is at the point where calling his own pretend games in the backyard is giving way to the possibility that he is now thinking seriously. Like, for example, he put Arizona State on his where to go to college list because he is engaging seriously with the idea that he might get to be a sports broadcaster. But the business has changed dramatically, right? And sports betting and sports gambling and that part coming into it affects it. So this is like a White House press briefing kind of question. One question in 12 subsequent parts. What's the practical implication for your business in the future and how the online gambling affects it? And from a philosophical standpoint, what do you tell a 15-year-old boy who is like, maybe I could be Al Michaels one day. Maybe I could do that. So unpack whatever you want out of that.
Gambling. We've had a form of it where fantasy football has become bigger and bigger and bigger, and now it's morphed into, thanks to the Supreme Court, gambling. And the league, which was always opposed to it, but kind of like looking at it, out of the corner of their eye opposed to it, like, there's a lot of money to be made here, and they are now making it because of that Supreme Court decision. Okay. But again, this is just the forwarding. It's paying forward what started out as fantasy football. I'm concerned. I think in a way when you become too obsessed with this, and by obsessed, I think especially for teenagers, young people trying to make their mark, who don't have a lot of money in particular, and are starting to not only bet on games, but bet on pitches and plays and the prop bets. Whoa. Prop bets are almost impossible to win. I love, for instance, the game of craps is phenomenal.
Amen, brother.
Yeah,
Yes.
oh, brother, it's the best. And I know exactly how to play it to get the best odds. And it's fun to, throw $5 out and just say, give me an 11. You know what? The 11 is you're giving away 16 2/3%. Okay. No way you can play craps and bet the prop bets and win. So the same thing now with sports. I think there have to be rails. I think they're trying to put some in right now, but I don't want to say this is going to be the ruination of sports. It's not. But I think there are, people who have, gambling fixations and addictions, and they better seek some help, or otherwise, you're going to wind up destitute. With your son, I think the important thing, if you want to get into this business, is you need to learn how to write. We should talk about.
I'm loving you,
Yeah,
Al Michaels. I'm loving you.
Yes, and amen.
I was the sports editor of my high school paper and my college paper at Arizona State. Had a column called The Hot Spot. I once got Frank Kush was our coach. I wrote something that he didn't like. He called me into his office, read me the riot act, and I gave it right back to him at that point. I was an arrogant prick, I guess, maybe. But anyway, my grandson both of them now are at Wisconsin. One is a senior and he's broadcasting games. The other is a freshman and will wind up broadcasting games. And I tell these guys, I want you to study journalism and English. English, huge. Speech. Those are the things you need to study. And they are, and they have. I mean, if you can write, you can, I mean, it's so much easier to evolve into the television form of this business if you can write, because your orally writing is what you're doing. So I mean, to me, that's the most important thing. And have a passion. You have to have a love for sports. You just have to.
Well, I'm going to tell him, I'm going to make clear that I did not pay you or bribe you in any way to say exactly what I believe to be true, at least in the news business, which is you got to be a writer first. You got to be a writer first.
You have to be, especially the play-by-play guy. The analyst may be a little bit different in terms of, he's there to, walk you through exactly what he knows firsthand. But as a play-by-play person, writing is essential.
Football is national trust. You guys did the numbers. In 2023, of the 100 most watched broadcast moments in American life, 89 were NFL, 7 were college football, and of the 4 that were technically not football, 1 was the Academy Awards, 1 was the State of the Union, 2 were just edge of football programming. Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade, which is basically the pre-show for Dallas Cowboys football on Thanksgiving, etc. And 1 was, I think, the ESPYs. So football is our second most important national religion, and it's the one that's the least divisive. And so football brings us together. And yet college football, despite the fascinating moment of Signetti pulling a Herb Brooks and doing something truly for the ages, the broadcast numbers in the key moments are high, but fan satisfaction with college football is in trouble if it's just junior pro football. We don't do partisanship or policy here in general, and it's not your day job, Al, but we'd love to force you to be king for a day. Is there a way, as you see it, to fix constant free agency portal world for college football, or is the problem not as big as I worry it is?
Well, I think it could get to be as big. Again, if they tweak this, here come the lawyers again to undo what you're trying to make better. Again, if you tell somebody, hey, you can't make this amount of money, look, they couldn't pay college athletes until they could pay college athletes. Who do they thank? The Supreme Court. Okay.
Right. 9-0.
So, yeah. So that's how that happened. It's so funny because I was with Roger Goodell last night. We were at a function here in Los Angeles, and I asked him that same question, and he said, it's concerning to him too, because you've got a situation now where you have guys who could come into the National Football League and be fringe players or backup players or maybe not even make the team, and who have now opted to stay in college because they can make more money playing college football and moving around and going through the portal than they can in the National Football League. So that is a concern of Roger, and I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. I mean, this is an evolving situation that's really only happened over the last 3 or 4 years. And I think, to me, the most disturbing thing is watching a kid who's a kid. There's somebody, they're 25 years old and they're playing for their 7th college. I mean, come on now. It's college football. So it's funny too. I got anecdotally. So last night this was a group of people involved in Los Angeles sports, and the Olympics are coming here, and the World Cup and the Super Bowl next year and all of that. And these are people who are very involved in, helping to promote and sponsor various things that are going on in LA. So Roger came out because the Super Bowl is here after next season. And I've known Roger a long time. We get along great. We've done this dog and pony thing a few times. So I said to him last night, I said, Roger, I said, the key question everybody in this room wants to know right off the bat It's the one thing you haven't had to deal with in your 20 years, and that is expansion. You came in with 32 teams. You have 32 right now. Roger, when can we expect the National Football League to announce that they will be expanding to Greenland? So,
Well done.
we'll put a team in, and I said, come on, we're all looking forward to that game between the Bears and the Polar Bears. Let's get it on. Come on, man.
Well done. Well done. Thank you.
Yeah, I can't say enough. Just one. I'm gonna have to say it. To do what you've done for as long as you've done at the level you've done, and be a husband, dad, friend, good human being, esteemed by your colleagues and competitors. It's a real accomplishment, and it's a privilege to get to talk to you today.
Well, I thank you for mentioning the husband part of it, because, I don't think any of this really happens. I met a girl in the 10th grade, and we knew each other for 6 years. We will celebrate, you can look it up on Wikipedia too, so I can't lie. But in August, it'll be 60 years. It'll be 60.
Congratulations.
And she's the greatest thing, in my life. And look, I've been blessed. I've had the great career and been to a number of, been in a number of situations that are iconic and memorable. But to me, the most satisfying and wonderful part of it is Linda Michaels has been with me every step of the way. And we're blessed. I don't want to come back in the next life. I wrote a book in 2014, and I think at the end of it, I said something like, I'm not sure I believe in reincarnation, but if God wants to get even with me in my next life, I'll be working in a sulfur mine in Mongolia on the night shift. Anyway.
So
Al,
Linda
thank you.
Michaels, apple pie, football, baseball, and
America.
believing in miracles. Thank you
What
for
can I
this,
say?
Al.
Everything but a
Thank you,
Chevrolet. Ben, stay
Everything
well,
but.
be good. I hope let's come out the
We're
other
gonna
side.
fight. We're
Let's
going
do
to
it.
fight. Thank you, friend.
Okay. Chris,
Thanks, Al.
great to be with
Appreciate you.
Thanks, guys.
All right, Professor, what did we learn?
Thanks for leading us, Chris. That was fun. I want to travel with that guy. I mean, maybe not Cincinnati in the winter, but all the Hawaii stops. But actually, maybe not San Francisco in '89 for the earthquake either. But he's kind of traveled with me. I mentioned earlier, I've had a photo of the Miracle on Ice on a wall behind my desk for about 30 years straight. But I think some of what is touching to me when you hear him talk is just, he's a mensch, man. He's been married 60 years, had that incredible career, narrated some of the most iconic moments in our nation's history, but just a grounded dude. I think he's both incredible and humble. That was fun. What about you?
Well, obviously, for me, it was selfishly, that was a delight for me. The question that Al Michaels poses for me, that I want to put in front of you, is how do you know if you're making an idol of your work? Al Michaels seems to be, and this is what's sort of encouraging and inspiring about it. This is a guy who's done his work at an extraordinarily high level for 50 years, right? This is this amazing career. And he has a lovely family and he has a good life. How did he know that he had the balance right? And how did you know? How should we know?
That's long for an end, because it's hard for me to think about it without thinking about what Tirico just did this weekend when he said at the end, go chase your dreams. Nothing unites us like sports. And it's both yeah and no. I mean, that was an amazing little riff. I kind of want to know if he had a teleprompter or if that was all impromptu. Either way, it's incredible. But it's kind of a vocation versus work thing in my mind. You can do that kind of thing, narrate these moments that can get the best of tribe out of us when you're doing it as a calling to serve your audience. Vocation is kind of for others, so it's hard to see how you get all the way to idolatry there, as opposed to many kinds of work get to the place where we think we're building a permanent storehouse, or at least that's been the way I've reflected on the many, many, many times I've crossed that line. I think sports are they're their proto-war without having to have all the gore and the death. You get to have a chance, Aristotle style, to go to the theater. You get to go put on tribal face paint and be all in. We don't really hate Canada, but during this game, you needed to. I kind of wish Justin Trudeau had still been in office. It would have just made it a little more sweet, since he said he couldn't take their nation. True. Couldn't take their game. Ha, ha, ha. Joke's on you, Jack. And we got the better Jack. So the Hughes brothers, think about how many people's moms knew nothing about hockey at 7 a.m. Sunday morning. And by 9, they knew everything about the three brothers, their relative contracts, the two that had played together, what it's like the two of the three had been on the Olympic team, two of the three had been offensive players versus defensemen. Like, the Hughes family is now part of everybody's family. That's pretty awesome. Vocation's a chance to love your neighbor. Work is a chance to lie to ourselves that we're going to build something lasting. I don't know. What do you think? Beat it up.
Well, that's the thing I wrestle with, right? I'm a 50-year-old man and I love my work, and I think it's a vocation. I think I was called to it. But how do you know, right? And how do you say you cross the line many times? And what I take from that is we all are going to cross the line many times, and it's about moving the sliders, not getting it right 100% of the time.
Yeah. I mean, we'll come back to the idolatry theme. I'm sure a lot. I'm wrestling with it personally, but for this weekend, and why we wanted to move this up and change the order of our episodes, is because when you have Al Michaels in the can, obviously, as we said at the outset, we recorded that before the February 22nd, 2026 Olympics. But when you have Al Michaels in the can, you can't leave him there. We got to open it up. Sports gives us a pretty unique window into the human experience, and we need someone to narrate it for us. He's not the voice of God, but he is the greatest voice of sports ever, and grateful that he'd join us.
All right. Do you promise we can have Conan next week? We can laugh with Conan next week.
Well, since I'm not funny at all, according to Stirewalt, I don't know. Maybe we'll have to bump him again. No, I like Conan. We need to get him on.
Okay, we will do that. All right. That is it for this week's episode. We hope you'll like, review, and subscribe, and tell a friend. Feel free to email us with your thoughts, corrections, questions, or whatever's on your mind. Write us at sassandstirewalt@gmail.com. This podcast was produced by Scott Emmergut with the help of our colleagues at the American Enterprise Institute. The music is from Drew Holcomb and the Neighbors. Thanks for listening, and keep living the good life.